Okay, hi everyone. I think we'll make a start now. Welcome to part 3, the final part in this series of webinars on Microsoft's Power BI tool suite. I'm Naresh Patel from IM Group. I've been working with PowerMap since it first came out as a tool called GeoFlow back in February 2013. At that time, it wasn't actually very usable because I was really interested in using it to see how well it could deal with larger data sets. And it wasn't until its September release that it actually became a very usable tool. And it subsequently went into general availability earlier this year. So in terms of what PowerMap is, quite simply it's a geospatial mapping tool. You can visualize millions of rows of data. Naturally it's quite resource hungry, being a graphical tool. You can generate stunning, well I think they're stunning, HD quality videos, and now in a recent addition to the tool, you can actually add soundtracks as well. So you can add some music if you wanted to accompany the annotations. Or you could actually add a vocal track to explain what's going on, which is not actually as bad as it sounds, because if you were actually doing a presentation and you want to synchronize if you want to get the timing right of what's going on in the actual map with describing what's actually happening, the risk with trying to wing it manually by talking over it is that somebody asks a question and straight away your timing is out of sync. So creating a soundtrack to accompany it's not a bad idea. Again, this is very much like Power View and Power Query, which we covered in the first 2 sessions in this series. I see a PowerMap as very much a user-driven tool, so there's limited IT support is required, if any. And finally, the time series functionality I think really brings the tool to life. You can drop in a date dimension and basically see your data build up over time, which is really an important feature. I think the possibilities are limitless if your business operates in a space where you are producing data or geospatial data is relevant to your business. So let me show you some examples. Now, one thing I should say at this point is PowerMap being a graphical tool, I have produced a number of videos with PowerMap, which you'll be able to watch after this session at your leisure. We'll send you the, I'll give you the details to find the videos on YouTube. The reason I don't want to show the videos over a webinar is because obviously broadcasting a video over the internet as part of a webinar, it's going to be it'll be very jumpy. It won't actually look good. So what I've done is I've taken a number of screenshots, and I will demonstrate to you how we build a map in using PowerMap. I will actually show you that for real. So you will get to see the tool very shortly. But first I thought it would be worth showing you some screenshots and how I've used PowerMap to answer certain questions. So this particular one shows 5 million rows in a single PowerMap. These are basically, all the examples I show you are based on my usual demo data set of property data from the property sale data from the UK Land Registry. What you're looking at here is 5 million sales of houses and flats. The flats are shown in orange, which is interesting because you can clearly see, hopefully you can see my mouse moving, but you can clearly see where all the cities are. Obviously London, predominantly sales of flats. And then all the seaside towns are all along here. You can see them all along the coast. The blue areas are basically sales of mainly detached properties. So as you get out in the countryside, that's what you'd obviously expect to find, and in the rural areas. So that sort of illustrates that PowerMap can handle very large volumes of data. And in fact, I found PowerMap, and bear in mind PowerMap runs inside Excel 2013. I actually found PowerMap to be better at handling large volumes than some other tools, some other mapping tools that I tried. So while from an interactive point of view as a user within PowerMap, you can zoom out, and I sort of think of that in terms of you tend to zoom out to look for patterns in the data, and you'll see the sort of three-dimensional aspect in terms of the ability to tilt the map itself, as you can see here in this image, but also the fact that it automatically aggregates data for you. So what we're looking at here is numbers of properties sold, and this is obviously London, and the colors indicate the price range. So we can see predominantly in the suburbs the price range is around 100 to 200,000 for this particular data set. As we start to get into the center, the color starts to change. There's more of a purple base, which is more around 2 to 300,000. And then as we get right into the center, you can see 3 to 500,000, and then even you can see red areas, which are 700,000 to 1 million pounds. And then there's some blue in there, 1 million to 2 million pounds. But you get the idea. So you can zoom out to look for the patterns, and then you can zoom right in. So this is something that really does sort of wow, but give it that wow factor when I show people, is that you can actually zoom from right out seeing the whole world. You can zoom right down to street level interactively. So I'll show you that when I actually do the demo shortly. So let's have a look at how we can use PowerMap to answer certain questions and see what's actually going on. So I decided to do a little bit of analysis on properties costing over £3 million over a 3-year period. And this was a simple chart that I did in PowerView. And what I immediately noticed is what you'll probably notice is this spike here in 2011. And I looked at this and I thought, okay, well, there's something wrong with the data here, was my initial thought. But then I looked into it a bit more and it all suddenly started to make a bit more sense. There was something was happening. So what I did was I put this into, one of the things I did with the data was I put it into PowerMap as a time series. And the video to this is on, I think the video to this is on YouTube. But basically what you can see here is normal activity in March 2011. So this is the 16th of March. You can see the dates just up here in the top corner. The color in this case indicates the property type. So these orange squares are flat selling. So on a normal day in March, now I actually used data that was for properties costing above £1 million rather than 3 million. And you'll see that's a normal day's activity in March in 2011. Then by the 1st of April, this happens. So we suddenly start to see that spike occurring that you saw on the chart. So we're seeing a lot more properties here. So a lot of these are, you can see the orange ones are flats, the yellow ones are terraced houses, but there's a lot more activity on the 1st of April. By the 4th, that pattern seems to be continuing. And then finally by the 5th, it all goes crazy at the very last minute. Now the reason I say last minute is because 5th of April being the start and end of the tax year. So I thought, well, there's definitely something going on here, and a quick search on the internet showed that the reason this occurred was because on the 5th or 6th of April 2011, the government raised the rate of stamp duty on properties costing over £1 million to 5%. So what you're seeing here is basically a last-minute run on very expensive properties, everyone trying to complete to keep their stamp duty bill down. And after that, back to normal activity. So this is the 28th of April. And it doesn't matter whether I show you the 16th of April or the 20th, or the pattern is the same. There's very few properties selling at that point. So that's quite a good example of how we can use PowerMap to illustrate a very powerful point. And as a video, it's really good because you see just these very small levels of activity, and then suddenly you get this massive property selling. Sorry about this. You get a massive property selling reaching a sort of crescendo around the 5th of April. Okay, so here's another example. I took all the data for flats in London, for all sales of flats in London from 1995, and put them in as a time series. So every single flat that sells since 1995 appears as a dot. Now, this is 1996, and what you can see immediately is you can see the level of activity that's occurring, but you can see from the color that most flats were costing sort of around the 0 to £100,000, a little bit 100 to 2,000 towards the central area. But you can see the sort of general average price of a flat in London at that time. If we jump ahead 5 years, and bear in mind this is a video that is on YouTube, so you can actually watch this. If we jump ahead 5 years to 2000, to sort of 4 years to 2000, you can now see how the prices have changed. The white has been sort of pushed out into the suburbs. Okay, so if you want to spend only up to 100,000, you're not anywhere near the central area. Within the central area, the colour is starting to predominantly change more to cream, 200 to 300,000 pounds, and yellow, 300 to 500,000 pounds. There's some blue in there, so 500 to 700,000. There's some violet, lilac, which is sort of around 1 to 2 million, 2 to 3 million pounds showing up as well. And this is in 2000. So if we march ahead to 2007, now look at that. The other thing you can notice here is the level of activity has increased. So there's a lot more happening in 2007. And you can see the price again, even in the suburbs, there's a lot of yellow now. Within the central area, what you can see is there's two layers in this map. One is the dots, the circles, and the other one is a heat map. So there's a heat map building up showing the average price. So you can see the hot spots where the prices are higher. And that obviously tends to congregate around the central parks like Hyde Park and Regent's Park, etc. But again, you can see the prices are now sort of in the 1 to 2 million pound mark, which is the violet circles. There's still 3 to 500,000 around the centre as well. But there's a lot of activity going on. Now, one thing we know from the data by looking at the property data from the Land Registry is 2007 was the peak of the market. And by 2008, there was a severe drop-off. And by 2009, you can immediately see the level of activity is much lower than it was in 2007. However, the prices haven't actually changed that much. So you can see a lot of blue creeping in now. So again, the sort of luxury sector of the market, which is sort of around here, around the central area, hasn't suffered from a drop in price as much as other areas outside of London perhaps did in that time space. So you can see 700,000 to 1 million. You can see violet. You can sort of see that, and mainly that the level of activity has severely dropped off. By 2013, you can see London is doing well again. There's a lot more activity going on. You can see the red circles. These are properties costing £5 million plus, and a lot of violet around the centre as well. Again, sort of 1 to 2 million, 2 to 3 million. And again, the average price outside of the central area, where there's a lot of yellow, so you're talking 3 to 500,000, which sort of remains the average price today, I would say. So let's get on with a little demo. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the same data set, but I'm going to use flats in London sold in 2012 and after. So it's about 118,000 rows. Now I'm going to use Power Query that you saw last week to get the data into a Power Pivot model. And we're going to do a little bit of, very small bit of tidying up in Power Pivot. And we're going to visualize that data then in Power Map. So let me just escape out of here. Now you'll just excuse me while I shut down my link to make sure we don't get any further interruptions. Apologies for that. It's gone. Lovely. Right, so I'm going to go straight over to Excel, and I'm in Power Query. Now what I'm going to do is slightly different, I think, from what I showed you last week, is I'm going to do an online search. I'm not going to search for public data, which I can in Power Query. I'm actually going to search for organizational data. So up here on the left, there is a filter. So I can say just search for organization data. So this is searching the online, in our private Microsoft tenant for Power BI. It's searching the online data catalog. So what I've done is I've saved one of my queries up to the data catalog in the cloud. Even though my data is on-premise, so it's running in a local database, I can still obtain my query from the cloud so that it's shared. And this is the one I want, so I can immediately hover over it and see a preview in Power Query. I can see that it's got the latitude and longitude that I want. You can map by postcode as well, so I could have used postcode, but what I've found with Power Map is that the rendering of latitude and longitude, because it goes out to Bing Maps, Microsoft Bing, is a lot quicker with the latitude and longitude than it is with postcode, but it still works fine with postcode. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to edit the data set just to make sure it's all good. So you can see it's now hopefully you can see it's now downloading the query. So the idea of sharing the query on the online data catalog is that other people can then use it. And I can see it's got a description, geotime series data set for PowerMap with latitude, longitude, etc. So here's my data. I'm happy with it. It's already defaulting to load to the data model because I've set that up. So I'm going to just apply and close, and that will load my data. So those of you who were here, and I think some of you were here last week's session, will have seen me using Power Query to do something similar. So it's loading 118,000 rows, and of course it's nice and quick, which is great. Imagine trying to do this 10 years ago. So that's now loaded into Power Pivot. So I'll just go across to Power Pivot now, click on the Manage button, and we'll just wait for it to bring up Power Pivot, not too long. So I've just got one flat table in Power Pivot. I'm not doing any data modeling. I'm not blending in any other data sets as we did last week. So I'm just going to select my transfer date column, and the first thing I want to do is just change the format to remove the time, because this data isn't actually time-based, it's only date-based. And the latitude and longitude, they default to text. It doesn't actually make a difference for PowerMap. PowerMap is still smart enough, but just for cleanliness, I'm going to change the latitude and longitude to decimal numbers. And that's it. That's all the data preparation I need to do. So each line is one property selling. It's got a date, it's got a price band, and it's got a volume of 1. So every row represents one sale, which means when I aggregate it up, all it has to do is sum or count the volume column. It doesn't matter which it does. So go back to Excel now, and PowerMap appears now on the Insert menu. So here it is over here. So it's already integrated into Excel, albeit as an add-in, so it does actually open up. In this case, it will open a separate window. But just from a familiarity perspective, it appears within Excel. So there we go, it's done it. It's actually gone and already mapped my 118,000 rows. Now, it would have done that very quickly, and it does that for us. Now, you are going to experience, as I move around the map, close that window. As I move around the map, it's going to probably appear a bit jumpy to you. For me, it's actually quite smooth movement when I zoom in and zoom out around the map. Now, the kinds of things we can do with PowerMap, we can change the themes. So, for example, if I want to have a satellite map, I'm hoping that you can see this. So I've got a satellite map as the background now, and this is all coming from Bing Maps, so you do need to be connected. I quite like this nighttime theme that you saw in some of the slides earlier, but I'll go back to the default one. So there's a few different themes that we can choose. You can zoom right out, and hopefully you can see a little ball that is the world. There we are. And we can move that around. I'll zoom back in. It's very smooth from my perspective on my machine. Obviously over the internet, over this webinar, it's not going to be as smooth for you. I can flatten the map. Okay, so if I just zoom out, you'll see what I mean. I've now got a flat map, but it's still three-dimensional because I can still tilt it like this. Okay, and I can still zoom in and zoom out. So it's still a 3D map at this point. Okay, so over on the right, this is where we can set up our layer. It's already determined that the geography settings, it's going to use our latitude and longitude. So I'm just going to click Next at this point. And what I'm going to do first of all is I'm going to say I've got a few boxes down here to fill. So the height of the bars that we're going to see is going to be determined by the volume sold. So I click on Volume, and it automatically will put that into the right box for me. I'll just make this legend a bit smaller. And there we go. It's already aggregating the data now upwards. For category, I'm going to use the price band. So it's now going to color the bars according to the price band in which the particular data sits. Okay, so again, immediately we can see that predominantly on the outskirts there's a lot of orange going on, which is 100 to 200,000 pounds within this data set. And what I described earlier, that we can zoom right into the data right down to street level. I'm going to take the flat map off for a second. I'm also going to add some map labels so we can actually see where we are, where there's enough room. So here's Hyde Park, for example. There's the Central Parks, Kensington Gardens, and Hyde Park. And we can zoom right out. You get the idea. As I said, it's quite a fluid movement for me here. One of the things, unfortunately, that is lacking in PowerMap, but I'm sure that will come fairly soon, is the ability to filter. So I'd like to be able to just click on one of these members in this price band dimension and see everything else either disappear or get grayed out. But you can't do that quite yet. You can do things like changing the shapes. So instead of square columns, I can have round columns like that. Let's change that back to square. Square is fine for now. The other thing then is to add the time. Let's see how we can add the time series. So I've got my transfer date field, and all I need to do is click on it, and it pops it straight into the time field here. And I've got a couple of options here. I can say data shows for an instant, for example, or data accumulates over time. So let's go with data shows for an instant. And it's now processing. You can see down here at the bottom of the window, there it goes. It's processing 111,000 rows. Now the ones of you who are paying attention would have noticed that originally I had 118,000 rows. It's only processing 111,000 because it's obviously aggregating the data as well by position. So there's 111,000 different coordinate sets that it's dealing with, I think. So let's go to the time duration settings, and I'm going to set it to run for about let's say 10 seconds. And I'm going to add a little effect called circle. So the map is going to spin very gently just to add a little extra effect for us. And now I'm going to play the tour. So as I said, I do apologize, but because this is coming over as a webinar, you may not see the same kind of smooth movement I see, but you will be able to watch some of these videos after this session. So if I play the tour now, let's see what happens. So there we go. Hopefully what you can see is the map is spinning very gently. And I'll just put it to recycle to play from the start again. And you'll see the data points appearing and disappearing. Hopefully you can see that to some degree. And what I'll do now is I'll change the settings on the date field, on the time setting, so that data accumulates over time. So what you'll see this time, once it's processed, so again, here it goes, it's processing. So we'll just wait for it to finish before we start it. Here it goes. Don't know if you can see that progress bar, hopefully. Right, so if we play the tour now, let's see what it does. So now you can see the data is, hopefully you can see the data is accumulating. So it's no longer disappearing, it's building up. So that's great when we want to see the overall performance rather than just a point in time. Hopefully some of you are already getting a sense for how you could, for example, if you were in retail and you had branches, or in banking, for example, if you had branches all over the country, you can see how you might want to map the transactional data that's coming out of those centers. So you could actually view performance, again, from one city to another or one branch against another in a visual manner. So that's the time series functionality. Another thing that we can do is we can create tours. So I'm going to zoom out at this point to about here, and I'm going to say, okay, let's put up the tour editor over here so we can see the same thing in the tour window here. I'm going to add a scene to the tour, and this time I'm going to tell it to zoom right down to street level, right to Hyde Park. Here we are. So I'm going to go just about to here. There we go. And then I'm going to tell it, okay, let's add another scene, but now I'm going to zoom out a bit, and I'm going to go to a completely different part and zoom in over here. And then finally, I add one more scene, and we're going to zoom right out again, and right out to see the globe. There we go, about there. So I've created 4 scenes now, and the great thing with PowerMap is PowerMap will stitch those together for me. So I'm not going to adjust the times, but you can adjust the time that you want to view each scene by. So let's see what happens when I play the tour. So Okay, so it started here. The data's building up. You will see the data building up over and over again because it is a time series. So I should probably have taken the time out. Okay, and even for me, when I'm watching this just now on my machine, it's still a bit jumpy. What we can do with PowerMap is we can actually turn this into a video. So we can actually export the whole tour as a video. And when you view that, the quality is excellent because we're not limited then by the machine resources, anything else that's going on the laptop. It's just producing a video. Hopefully you saw some of that animation that's just happened there. So it's just about to finish, but I'll just escape out of it anyway. Okay, so that's a quick demo of that. One last thing I'll show you, if we just zoom in a bit, is one of the other things you can do, which is quite useful, is you can copy an existing layer. So just here where we have our layers, I can add another layer. Now this could actually be different. When I add a layer, in this case I've actually duplicated the existing layer, but I could actually be bringing in data from another data source and putting that onto the same map as a separate layer. But in this case I've copied the existing layer, and what I'm going to do with this one is use the same geography. So I'm just going to click Next, and what I'm going to do here is I'm going to turn it into a heat map. Okay, so it's just processed the heat map for me, and I'll just put the volume on as a field for that. So again, it's processing. I'll just close the legend for now. It's just to illustrate how we do this. If I click on my layers button now, so what I can do is I can actually, let's zoom in a bit and close the tour window. I can zoom in and you can now see the heat map underlying. You can just see the outline of the heat map underlying the first layer. But if I remove the first layer, you can see the heat map there. Okay, so we can actually switch our layers on and off on demand within PowerMap. If we switch them both on together there. Okay, and the create video function, which is here, allows you to save your video out, save your tour out as a video. You can go right up to 1080 HD definition, which is really good. You can also add your soundtrack, as I mentioned earlier. You can choose to loop the soundtrack or fade it out, fade it in, and you just simply browse and find an MP3 file, MP4 file, whatever, on your machine. I'll just cancel that. It doesn't have the facility, I don't think it has the facility to actually record your voice as the map is playing, so you'd need to think carefully about how to achieve that. Okay, so let's just cancel that. The time taken to render a video depends on how much data there is. I have found problems in the past with trying to output a video when there was millions of rows on the map. So it's probably best to start with smaller data sets if you are thinking of producing a video with PowerMap to start with. Okay, let me switch back to the slides. So in summary, PowerMap is available on all Office 365 subscriptions. It's also available currently free as an unsupported preview for Office 2013. So if you just search for PowerMap download, you should find the Microsoft web page to download it. So you can just add it into Office 2013. They just recently changed that because the previous preview did expire at the end of May. So if you find that it comes up and tells you the preview has expired, just basically uninstall it from your control panel and basically you download the new preview and install that, and you should be fine. Very easy to use, very easy to use and produce very powerful and compelling data visualizations. Comes down to the kinds of messages you're trying to get across and what data set you're illustrating. It is, however, limited, if you haven't already guessed, it's limited by its inability to integrate with the other Power BI tools. So we can produce a video, which is great, but we can't actually integrate the map into, say, Power View or into the natural language query Q&A. So that's a bit of a downside to it, is that you're either showing the map interactively on the desktop with Excel, or you're showing a fairly sort of static video. It is resource hungry, so if you're using large data sets, make sure you are using the 64-bit version of Office and the 64-bit, hence the 64-bit version of PowerMap. One last thing I wanted to show you in this series is don't forget Excel. Excel itself can do a lot. I know the Power BI stuff is tools are very compelling, but Excel has a lot more visualizations currently than, say, Power View, for example. That will change over time. This is basically a 3D surface chart that I did in Excel. It's made up of data from 18 million rows of land registry property sale data. And I quite like showing this one just simply because it shows the number of properties sold by year from 1995 all the way to 2013. And each slice that you see here represents one English county. And what's really interesting about it is the uniformity, the shape, is the same in almost every single county. And this is 2007, the peak of the property boom, and this is 2008. And I love this because it just illustrates just how the sheer size of that drop really well, and the uniformity in terms of no area of the country was left unaffected by that market crash in 2008, 2009. So I really like that little chart because it's made up, as I said, of millions of rows of data, or millions of rows of underlying data, and its three-dimensional perspective is obviously quite appealing to the eye. Before I take questions, just to mention that on Monday IM Group is holding an event at Microsoft's offices in Victoria, transforming BI and data management. We're going to be covering a number of topics. I'm going to be there. I'm going to be covering item 3 on this list, which is looking at some of the visualization stuff I've already shown you through the webinars. But I'm going to be covering something I haven't covered in the webinars, which is the Q&A natural language query facility in Microsoft Power BI. It's a really good tool. It's very much in its infancy right now, but I think the message that it brings over is quite compelling in terms of the way that we could be accessing data and analyzing data in the future, in near future, in fact. But there's a number of other topics. If you find that there's anything of interest to you there, then I'm sure it's not too late to register. We already have a lot of people coming, but I'm sure there are more spaces. So that's on Monday morning, I think from about 8 o'clock, 8:30 onwards. So go to our website, click on the events link, and you'll see it's the first item on that page. These are my contact details if you want to email me. I'm also on Twitter. I post things on there occasionally. If you want to see any of the videos that I've generated from PowerMap, simply go to YouTube and search for Nereus Patel. So just search for me by name and you'll see that the videos come up as the first hits and my little channel is there. Some of the videos are worth watching if you are interested in PowerMap. There are a few different examples of different things, including a couple of things you've seen today. So let me just, without further ado, let me see if I can pull out the questions window at this point. Just bear with me for a second while I expand it out. Right, so if anyone has any questions, please type them into the little questions box that you can hopefully see. And I'm ready and waiting. So does anyone have any questions? If you are happy with everything you've seen and you're pretty much finished, then thank you very much to all of you who have attended these sessions and those of you who are here today. It's been a pleasure. The recordings of these sessions are also available on the IM Group website and possibly our YouTube channel, and you will receive, I think, a follow-up email regarding that. Great. So does anyone have any questions? No, I'm not seeing any questions. Nothing yet. Nope, if everyone's happy, please feel free to enjoy the rest of your lunch. Okay, so going 3, 2, 1. Okay, thanks everyone. In that case, I'm going to close the session. And thanks again for attending the webinars. If we do decide to do some more of these, we will keep you posted. Craig, you're very welcome. Says thank you. Thanks everyone. I'm going to close the session now.